Hello and welcome to the official Gamers Tavern podcast. I like to call it Tavern Talk. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. But first, before I get to the topic, I just want to say that I got a couple of comments on my last episode, I guess you can call it Tavern Talk episode podcast thing, and apparently like 5 people, maybe it was less than 5 people, I don't remember, but a couple of people they seem to want me to do more of this, so I guess I'll continue. I mean, I have so few people watching my videos and listening to my stuff and going to my website that whenever I get a single comment, it's kind of a big deal. So before, when I said that I need positive feedback in order to continue, well, actually, I don't remember if I said that, but basically, the last episode was a test to see whether there's interest in this or not. I was going to continue based on whether I got positive feedback. And by positive feedback, I mean a single comment. So as long as I get a single comment of approval, that's enough positive feedback for me. And I got like maybe 2 or 3, so that's way more than I expected. Therefore, I have decided, or I've come to the decision, that I will be doing more of these, at least for now. Anyways, before I get to my topic, I do want to say one other thing, and that's I want to try to engage my audience a little bit better. That is, anybody that's listening to this, so maybe you, I guess. So what I plan to do now is that I'm going to try and take topics from you guys, or gals, or whatever. So if you have a topic that you would like me to discuss, submit it. And by submit it, I mean you can post comments on my YouTube videos, you can send me an email on my website, you can send me a message or whatever on Twitter, or tweet at me on Twitter. I still don't really know how to use Twitter that well, but you can definitely contact me on Twitter. And maybe even Google+. Does anyone even use that anymore? So contact me on anything, basically, and send me a suggestion for a topic you would like me to discuss. And then I'll consider discussing it. Now, I can't guarantee that I will actually discuss your topic, because in order for me to discuss a topic, it needs to be about something I'm actually knowledgeable on, or at least something that I actually have an opinion on. So like, for example, if you asked me to talk about the latest Call of Duty game, I probably wouldn't be able to do that, just because I don't have an opinion on the latest Call of Duty game. I don't even know if there is a latest Call of Duty game, and I've never really played almost any of the Call of Duty games or the Call of Duty series in general, so I don't really feel well equipped to talk about it. Well, it's not really that I don't feel well equipped, it's that I can't actually talk about it. You know what I mean? I just don't have an opinion on it, and I don't really know what to say about it. Therefore, that's something that I can't really discuss. So if I don't actually discuss your topic, don't take it the wrong way. You know, I got nothing against you. It just, maybe you submitted a topic I just can't really talk about because I don't know what to say about it. So that's really my fault. That's not your fault. But I will try my best to discuss whatever topics you do submit. So even if you do submit a topic I'm not too knowledgeable on, I will try to do a little bit of research on it and see whether or not I can form an opinion on it and then discuss it. If not, then I will probably mention that you submitted the topic and say why I didn't discuss it. So if I don't discuss it, Don't take it personally. But in all likelihood, I'm probably going to discuss whatever you guys submit, because I'm going to get like one submission, if any, that is. So I can't just refuse a submission if I only get one. Gotta take it. But anyways, that's going to be the way I'm going to quote unquote engage my audience. So submit some topics and I'll do my best to discuss them. Now anyways, let's get on to the real topic of this episode. Is that what you're supposed to call it? Episode? Anyways, what I want to discuss today is, or this week, or this month, or maybe this year, however often I make these. I don't know how often I'm going to make these. But anyways, topic today is Final Fantasy Versus 13. Now, some of you might know that this game goes under a different title, and that title is Final Fantasy 15. But the reason why I'm going with the Versus 13 title, it's two reasons. One, I need to think of what name I'm going to give this episode, and I wanted to discuss Final Fantasy 15, but I wanted to discuss it twice. One time right now before the game comes out, and another time later when the game actually comes out. So if I'm going to name these, I want to have unique names. I don't just want to name it Final Fantasy 15, and then later on when it comes out, I'm going to have another episode named Final Fantasy 15 again. I know it's just semantics, doesn't really matter, but I'm going to call this episode Versus 13. And the reason for that, other than what I just mentioned, is because I'm going to be talking about everything in regards to the game before it comes out. So hopefully I can get this episode out before the game actually gets released. So yeah, that's why I'm going to call it Versus 13. And I might be discussing a lot of stuff about Versus 13 in particular, or specifically, uniquely, I guess, besides the actual final product of Final Fantasy 15. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But the two games are in fact one and the same. At least that's what most would have you believe, and I guess that's probably true. Although some would say that there are a lot of significant differences between the two, and that the game underwent a huge transformation when it had a name change. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's start from the beginning. So in the event that you don't know what I'm talking about, let's really start from the beginning. A long time ago, I think it's been nearly 10 years ago now, I think it was sometime in 2006, maybe, around the time that Final Fantasy 13 was announced for the PlayStation 3. I don't think it was announced initially for the Xbox 360. I think that announcement came later. But it was initially announced for the PS3, and alongside it came a lot of other announcements. At least I think. If I get any of these facts wrong, please forgive me. This game, Final Fantasy 15 Versus 13, whatever you want to call it, it's been in development for almost 10 years. It's kind of hard for me to remember all the details about its long development process. And I don't really have a fact sheet with me or anything. So if I do get anything wrong, you can correct me, I guess. That would be fine. But don't take it, don't expect me to know exactly what I'm talking about here, because I'm going off purely from the top of my head, just from my really low quality memory. So yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, that Final Fantasy Versus 13 was announced alongside the regular Final Fantasy 13, in addition to a bunch of other games. And there was a trailer shown for it, I think, maybe around the same time, maybe a little bit later. And the trailer, like most trailers, contained absolutely no gameplay. At least I don't think it did. Maybe it did contain like a second of gameplay, maybe a few seconds. But I seem to remember it was just one long cutscene. And I mean, the cutscene looked pretty cool. It looked pretty gosh darn good. But obviously a cutscene is not gameplay, and I couldn't really tell, like most people couldn't tell, whether or not this was actually going to be something good. But the cutscene looked good, so that was better than nothing, I guess. But anyways, the game was announced back then as Final Fantasy Versus 13. And at the time, again, I don't remember exactly the order of when this happened or exactly what time this happened. But eventually, it was announced that the person that was going to be working on Final Fantasy Versus 13 was, I think, Nomura. Again, I might have that wrong. Maybe it's not Nomura, maybe it's somebody else. But I think it's Nomura something. I don't remember his full name. And I think he's the guy that worked or works on the Kingdom Hearts series. I might be wrong about that, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the guy that does the Kingdom Hearts series. Or at the very least, the guy that does the Kingdom Hearts series was going to be working on this game. Whether that's Nomura or not, I don't quite remember, but I think he's Nomura. Now, obviously, I'm not very good at pronouncing Japanese names, as you probably have already figured out. In fact, I'm not really good at pronouncing anything, not even anything in English, even though English is my native tongue. So yeah, the Kingdom Hearts guy was going to be working on Final Fantasy Versus 13, and that information came out at some point early on, and that was really all we had to go by. It was a trailer of a cutscene that looked pretty cool, and the information that the Kingdom Hearts guys are going to be working on this Final Fantasy. And that was it. Now, I was kind of, hearing that news, I kind of liked that, because I like Kingdom Hearts. You might be wondering, well, why do you like Kingdom Hearts? And the main reason is just because I like the gameplay. It's basically a traditional action RPG, which a long time ago, back when Kingdom Hearts first came out, there weren't too many of those games. Nowadays, there's like a buttload of those games. I said a buttload. I guess what I meant is a boatload. But buttload is funnier. So there's a bunch of action RPGs now, but back when Kingdom Hearts came out, they were kind of a rarity. And I've always kind of liked action RPGs more than turn-based RPGs, because I don't really like turn-based battle systems that much. So that was the main thing that appealed to me about Kingdom Hearts, just the fact that it's an RPG, but there's no turn-based combat. So you can just run up to your enemies, mash the attack button, and obliterate them. And swinging your big key around and smashing enemies' faces in with it, I don't know, I found it really satisfying. So I liked the Kingdom Hearts games for that reason. But the one thing that I always kind of didn't much care for in regards to Kingdom Hearts, and I know this might sound like I'm going on a tangent, and that this has nothing to do with Final Fantasy Versus 13, but trust me, I'm gonna connect it all together. So bear with me here. But the big thing I didn't like about Kingdom Hearts, and this might sound weird given what Kingdom Hearts is about, but I never liked how it's got this Disney stuff in it. Like, the main gimmick about Kingdom Hearts is that you're going through all these Disney worlds and interacting with these Disney characters, mostly from the Disney animated films. And you just kind of being the hero, I guess. But from the kind of like an outsider, you're not actually controlling the heroes of these Disney films. You're a character who does not belong in these worlds, and you become it's kind of like a fish out of water story, I guess. You just come from a different world. You're a regular, average old guy with a key, or a kid with a key, and you bash things in with a key, and you're going into all these Disney worlds and helping them out, solve things, and beat the villains of each world. You know, like going into Aladdin's world, beating Jafar, or helping Aladdin beat Jafar, and stuff like that. So, I never really liked that stuff because I'm not really much of a Disney fan anymore. I mean, I liked Disney when I was a kid. I used to watch a lot of Disney movies or Disney animated movies, and I liked them. But around like the late 90s, I kind of stopped enjoying the Disney films. So never really, I don't know what it was. I think it was a combination of like, I was getting older and I didn't find the Disney movies appealing anymore because they seemed like they were geared towards children. And around the late 90s, I was kind of outgrowing the Disney movies. But at the same time, the Disney movies of the late 90s, they had a stylistic change. They were very different from the Disney movies that I grew up with. And I didn't like the stylistic change that they had around the late 90s and early 2000s. So I think it was a combination of just me outgrowing them, but also I didn't like the new style they were establishing. Therefore, I basically stopped watching all Disney movies around like 1999 or 2000. I think the last animated Disney movie I watched was like in 1999. And I think it might have been Tarzan. I think that might have been it. I don't remember if Tarzan came out in 1999 or it was 2000. But that was like literally one of the last movies I watched. Or Disney movies that I watched. Disney animated movies, I mean. And I didn't much care for it either. I didn't like it. I don't know if that's going to piss a lot of people off here. I'm not sure how popular that movie is. So I'm not sure how many people will be angry to know that I didn't like it. But then again, it's been over 15 years since I've seen it, so I have no idea what my feelings currently are on it. But anyways, I never liked any Disney movies made after the late 90s. And even stuff from the early 90s and mid 90s and before that I did like as a kid, I kind of find hard to tolerate that stuff now. Like, my favorite Disney movie of all time is Aladdin. And if I were to go back and watch it, I don't think I would really enjoy it that much anymore. Even though as a kid, I absolutely loved it. I watched that movie like 15 times. Kind of ironic when you think about it. But yeah, I would definitely say that Aladdin's my favorite Disney film of all time. But now, at my age, I don't think I would really get much out of watching it again. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. But anyways, I never really liked the Disney stuff in Kingdom Hearts. I just focused on the gameplay, which is what I liked the most. And the Disney stuff, I just kind of tolerated it, even though that was kind of the main focus of those games. Well, I did kind of like the nostalgic appeal, because being able to interact with those old Disney World movies, it was nostalgic. Seeing Aladdin and Jafar and all that stuff, I did get a nostalgic appeal from it. But beyond nostalgia, I didn't really care about the Disney stuff that much. And then in the later Kingdom Hearts games, where they started referencing the newer Disney movies that I hadn't seen or grown up with, there was no longer that nostalgic appeal, and therefore at that point, I basically didn't get anything out of the Disney stuff. Disney stuff was really just kind of annoying me or holding me back. So a big question I always thought to myself, and this is where I'm going to connect to verses 13. Big question I always thought to myself is, what would a Kingdom Hearts game be like if you got rid of the Disney stuff? And then they announced Final Fantasy Versus 13, which was basically going to be Kingdom Hearts without the Disney stuff. And that's why I got kind of excited for it, at least a little bit, because that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to play a Kingdom Hearts game without the Disney baggage holding it back. Now, what do I mean by that? Why does Disney stuff in Kingdom Hearts hold it back? Well, when you have Disney and something, you gotta make it kid friendly. And the Kingdom Hearts are kind of kid-friendly. And there's nothing wrong with a kid-friendly game, but as an RPG, and especially one being made by Squaresoft/Square Enix, Square has always been the kind of company that likes making games with really big, important plots, and sometimes really mature plots that deal with mature themes. I don't mean mature themes as in sex or violence or drugs, but mature themes just in terms of like stuff that a kid probably wouldn't get, or stuff that would be beyond comprehension of a kid. And you kind of see that actually in Kingdom Hearts. It's almost like the developers of Kingdom Hearts want to make a more mature, complicated plot line, but they can't because they're making a Disney game and they have to keep it kid-friendly, but they don't want to keep it kid-friendly all the way. So what we end up having with Kingdom Hearts is some kind of weird, awkward mixture of like a kid-friendly plot where nothing really bad happens and nothing too deep gets expressed, but at the same time the plot is really convoluted and really complicated. So complicated that I don't think any kid could possibly comprehend it. Even I can't comprehend it. And I've played basically all the Kingdom Hearts games and I still don't quite understand everything. It's just a complete kind of garbagey mess. But it's interesting and I do kind of like to see where it goes, because it's so unexpected. It's an unexpected wild ride, I guess you could say. You never know what's going to happen in a Kingdom Hearts game. But it always felt like there were limitations. Like if they didn't have the Disney stuff, they could really go all out and make a plot that would actually be interesting or maybe quite possibly good. So I just wanted to see like what would happen if you had a Kingdom Hearts game without the Disney stuff and a really more mature, more sophisticated plot line. So I thought this is what Versus 13 was going to be like. And for a while, it did seem that way. We started to get more information about it, little by little, throughout the years. More videos came out about it. There were a couple of more trailers. Eventually, there was like gameplay footage even. And one of the biggest gameplay footage videos that I saw that looked really good was a 2011 trailer. That trailer actually had gameplay in it, unlike most of the other trailers early on. And the gameplay basically looked almost exactly like Kingdom Hearts. Like the battle system in particular looked almost identical. Which to me was a great thing, was pretty fantastic. Now maybe that's not everyone's cup of tea. There might have been some people that saw that and were turned off by it. And I suppose I can understand if you don't really like that kind of battle system. But I liked it. And I was like, when I saw that trailer, like before the 2011 trailer, I wasn't really thinking about Versus 13 that much. I was just like, based off one of the first trailers, it was like, well, this could be good, but it looks like the story might be good, but we haven't seen much of the gameplay, and I'm not going to be too excited about it. I'll just keep my expectations tempered. But then when I saw the 2011 trailer, that's when I was like, wow, this might actually be pretty good. Like, this gameplay looks really good. The story looks like it might be really good. And the environments and the graphics and everything looked pretty cool. And there was just so much in that trailer, that 2011 trailer of Final Fantasy Versus 13. This was still before it had the name change. But there was so much in that trailer that I liked. There was, for example, and all of this is going to become important later when I discuss something else, but there was character switching. You can switch between all the characters in your party on the fly. There was, I think there might have been swimming, but I don't remember right now. And there were like vehicles. You can drive around in vehicles. There was magic tech armor. Like the magic tech armor from Final Fantasy VI. There were like magic tech soldiers. Soldiers were with guns and swords and stuff. There was a combination of magic and modern themes. And like machines and magic and all that kind of stuff. And I personally like that stuff. Because Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy, and I also like Final Fantasy 7 a lot, but 6 is my favorite. And the two big things about 6 and 7 was the theme of technology versus magic, or like sci-fi, steampunk versus fantasy. Because Final Fantasy 6 was like steampunk. I almost said steamfunk. I guess you could say that. But it was Final Fantasy 6 was steampunk versus fantasy, or a mixture of the two. And 7 was, I guess, a little bit more sci-fi and fantasy. So I always kind of liked that sort of thing, because I never liked straight up fantasy, where it's just medieval stuff and castles and knights and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff is cool, but I kind of get bored of that sort of thing, especially when every single RPG is a fantasy RPG. So I liked when they have a steampunk or sci-fi or whatever. But what was so cool about Final Fantasy VI is that it wasn't just steampunk, and it wasn't just fantasy, and it wasn't just sci-fi. It was a mixture of all these things. And that was what was really cool about it. And in particular, that theme of magic versus technology, that was really cool. I haven't seen like too many other RPGs explore that kind of theme. So it seemed like Final Fantasy Versus 13 was kind of going back to that, or calling back to that. And that made me kind of excited. Not too excited, but just a little excited. So that 2011 trailer looked really cool. But then something happened. There was kind of an information blackout on the game for a while, like months and months, basically years, where we got almost no information whatsoever. And then there were rumors the game was cancelled. I personally thought the game was cancelled, like I was 100% dead set in believing the game was cancelled, because the development had gone for so long, and there were so many tall tale signs of development problems. And generally when you have these kind of signs, it means the game is going to be cancelled. So there were just so many signs that the game was going to be cancelled. I was sure of it. But then all of a sudden, the game was announced to... Basically, they changed the name. They said, we're going to change the name to Final Fantasy 15. It's going to come out on next-gen systems. Because before this point, the game was going to come out on the PS3 and the Xbox 360. But then, when the name change happened, they announced that it was now going to come out for the PS4 and Xbox One. And then they quietly canceled the PS3 and 360 version, which really bothered me personally, because I was holding on to my PS3 in hopes that I'll be able to play Final Fantasy 15 on it. But alas, that is no longer the case. Now I'm either going to have to get the PS4 to play it, or I'm just not going to play it. I suppose time will tell. But either way, this was a massive like real life plot twist. A lot of people didn't expect something like this was going to happen. This was major, and I honestly didn't expect this to have happened. Although it seems like some people did expect it, because there were a lot of rumors before this happened that the game was going to be changed into Final Fantasy 15. And a lot of people like myself dismissed those rumors as ludicrous, ridiculous. But then those rumors turned out to be correct. And a friend of mine I was talking to at the time told me as much. He said that he believes almost 100% that was going to happen. And I told him I believe almost 100% that it wasn't going to happen. We got kind of in a heated debate over it. It was kind of an argument. We got into multiple arguments about it, actually. But at the end of the day, I turned out to be incorrect, and he turned out to be correct. I'm not really... I kind of wanted this to happen. Like, whenever... Like, the reason why I was not like, I wasn't opposed to this happening. It's just, I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought the likelihood of this happening was very low. But I wasn't opposed to it. I actually thought it was a good idea. Like, when I heard the rumors and when my friend told me about it, I was like, well, that would be pretty cool if they changed it into Final Fantasy 15 and then put all of their resources into making this into a big game. I was like, that would be great, but it's never going to happen, man. But then it happened. And I'm kind of glad I'm wrong on that, because I suppose this is for the best. But anyways, that's kind of the history, the short version of the history of Final Fantasy Versus 13 and Final Fantasy 15. Now, what am I actually going to talk about? Like, what's actually the topic here? And the topic is that I don't think I like Final Fantasy 15 anymore. Initially, I was excited for it, as I mentioned, but ever since the name change, they've been steadily releasing like videos and screenshots, and eventually the demo came out. Now, obviously, I don't have a PS4 or Xbox One, so I could not play the demo myself. But of course, with the modern wonders of the internet, we have YouTube and video streaming sites, so I was able to watch other people play the demo. And I didn't really like what I saw. Every single video I've seen so far, and every single footage of the demo I've seen, it just doesn't look that great to me. The game, that is. And it's a shame, because I was kind of excited for it. So this is kind of a weird turn of events for me, because I was excited for this game, but now I'm not. And why is it that I'm not excited for it anymore? Well, I said before, the main reason I was excited for it is because it looked like it was basically Kingdom Hearts without Disney stuff. But a couple of things happened when the game changed its name. And I don't remember the exact timing of a lot of this stuff. But one, Nomura, which I think is the Kingdom Hearts guy, he was taken off the project. And he was replaced by somebody else named Tabata. Unfortunately, I do not remember his full name, and I'm obviously mispronouncing his name like every other Japanese name, but anyways, so Tabata is the one working the game now. He worked on a previous game called Final Fantasy Type 0, which was initially actually going to be another Final Fantasy 13 spin-off, but then I guess they thought that was dumb, because that is in fact dumb to have like a billion Final Fantasy 13 spin-offs. So they changed the name. I don't remember if in Japan it also had the name change, or that was just for the US. Actually, I think it did have the name change in Japan. But anyways, it was changed. Initially, it was going to be called Final Fantasy 13 something. I don't remember what. Final Fantasy 13 Agito or whatever. Maybe that's a different one. But they changed it eventually to Final Fantasy Type 0, kind of removing it from the Final Fantasy 13 branding. And then it came out on the PSP initially, but the PSP version never came out in the US. It was only released in Japan. And then later on, they released the game in the US on the PS4. It was like a HD, I guess you can say remake. To me, it's more like an HD port, because it still looks like PSP game. It's just been upscaled. The resolution has been increased, rather. Not that it's been upscaled, but it has a better resolution, and maybe some of the textures were touched up a little bit, and I don't know what else they added to it exactly, but it's kind of like an enhanced HD port, because these things are really common. And I kind of have a negative opinion on HD ports, but I'm willing to let this one slide a little bit, because the game never came out in the US at all. So this HD enhanced port is actually the first time the US is getting it. I'm willing to overlook that. But anyways, that's this guy's history. Mr. Tabata worked on Final Fantasy Type 0. Now, I haven't personally played Final Fantasy Type 0, but I've seen some videos of it, and I mean, to me it looks pretty good. but I don't actually know how good it is because I haven't really played it. And I'm not sure what the general consensus is on that game, like if people like it or if people don't like it. I just remember before the game came out, people wanted it to come out here really, really, really badly. And people were upset that Square Enix wasn't releasing it here. Then all of a sudden, when the game finally came out here, I didn't hear anything about it. Like, all the people that were talking about it constantly online, they just suddenly stopped talking about it. So I don't know if that's just because they're absolutely content and they're happy that they finally got it, or maybe they're disappointed because it's not as good as they thought it was going to be. So I don't know. I don't have a personal opinion on that game since I haven't played it, and I'm not sure what the opinion of the internet is on that game or what everybody else's opinion is. By the way, that's kind of Tabata's portfolio. He worked on that game. I'm not sure what else he worked on before that. So ever since Tabata took over the project, a lot of changes have occurred. Now, I don't know if these changes are due to him, or maybe these changes were always going to happen, regardless of whether he took over or if Nomura stayed on. Or perhaps these aren't changes at all. Maybe these are things that were going to happen no matter what, and this is how the game was destined to be. But I and a lot of other people online seem to be under the opinion that the game has changed significantly since it was first announced. Now obviously we don't have any evidence of this because we never got the game in its original form, so we don't know how it would have been, and therefore we can't say the game has changed since the first few years of its development, but that's kind of the working theory. Now there is some evidence of certain changes that are like definite proof, and one of those is the character switching. Initially, like I mentioned, the 2011 trailer had character switching. You can see it very clearly in the trailer. But then it was later removed. And when Tabata was asked about it, or whoever was asked about it, I don't know who was asked about it in particular, they said that the character switching was removed. It's no longer in the game, and that it will not be returning. Now, this bothered a lot of people, and initially this didn't bother me too much, but then when I started thinking about it more, it did kind of bother me. And the main reason is because in the 2011 trailer, one of the things that I saw was that, okay, now, for a little bit of background information, you have like I think around 4 party members and each one uses a different weapon. The main character Noctis uses a combination of different swords, and I think there's a dude that punches stuff, and there's another dude that has like a big sword, and a dude with like smaller swords. So you can switch between these different characters and use their different swords. At least you were going to be able to do that. But what really interested in me is that you have one party member who uses a gun. And in the 2011 trailer, when you switch to that party member, you suddenly have third-person controls, or third-person viewpoint, where you can shoot enemies in third person. Now when I saw that, I was quite impressed, because I was like, wow, that's really ambitious. You're going to have an action RPG with a primarily short-ranged melee combat system, and you're also going to have third-person shooter controls all in one game, and you can switch between these controls on the fly by switching to different characters. That's like, from a programming standpoint, that's really ambitious. From a gameplay standpoint, that's ambitious. And just from every kind of standpoint, that is pretty ambitious, especially for Final Fantasy standards, which Final Fantasy typically is just a turn-based RPG. And then there's the fact that this is an RPG with a big world. So having that kind of mixture of mechanics, that's quite ambitious. So I almost felt like that was too good to be true. It's like, there's no way they're going to be able to deliver on that kind of ambition. But it was in a trailer, so I figured, well, I guess maybe they're really going to do it. So I'm really interested in seeing how that's going to play out. Except they didn't do it. And I suppose it was too ambitious. And maybe I was right initially when I thought that they couldn't do it, because they didn't. Now character switching has been removed, and there is no third-person shooting as far as we know in Final Fantasy 15. So that's a done deal. That's over and out with. And there's just a lot of other things about the game that I've seen that I don't quite like anymore. Like, obviously the game is going to be open world. I don't remember exactly when that was first announced. I'm assuming it was early, but I don't know. And now personally, I don't really care about open world stuff. I just wanted to play the game because I thought it was going to be Kingdom Hearts minus the Disney. And the open world would just be, whatever. It's not something that I'm particularly interested in. But now it's kind of like they got rid of the Kingdom Hearts battle system and they replaced it with some other battle system. And that in itself is not really a bad thing. I mean, if they replace it with another battle system that's as good or better, then why is that bad, right? But from the demo footage I've seen, the new battle system doesn't look good. It's still an action-based battle system without turn-based combat, which in my opinion is a good thing, but it looks really clunky and janky, and it just doesn't look right. And a lot of people who've played the demo have confirmed this. Most of the people say that it doesn't feel right. Now perhaps this will change when the final game comes out. But I don't know, I think it might remain mostly the same. It looks way too simplistic, the battle system. Not that the Kingdom Hearts battle system was that complicated. I mean, you just mashed X to win. But my argument about that is, if mashing X to win is fun, then why does it matter what you're doing, And smashing things in with a key was a lot of fun to me. Just hearing the key smash into enemies' faces was super satisfying, and seeing the little particle effects and the stars and stuff flying out of enemies, I don't know, it was a lot of fun. And then enemies kind of explode into like money things that drop onto the ground, and you pick it up. It just, the whole act of defeating enemies in Kingdom Hearts was a lot of fun, even though essentially you were just mashing the X button, I guess. But there was magic, and there were a couple of moves, and you can actually do other stuff besides mash the X button if you wanted. And the newer Kingdom Hearts games kind of fixed that with a more complicated, in-depth battle system that punishes you for just mashing X. So that's not always the case. But either way, battle system in Final Fantasy 15 right now, it looks too simplistic in kind of like a bad way, and kind of like it lacks depth, and it doesn't seem satisfying. The slashing of enemies and beating up enemies, it's just not satisfying like it is in Kingdom Hearts. At least it doesn't look like it to me. Again, maybe if I played the demo I might feel differently about all this, but from seeing the demo it doesn't look that cool to me. And that's a bummer, because I was hoping it was going to be cool. And there just hasn't been much to see about the game. Like, so far they've been really pimping out the open world stuff, like that's basically the main focus. So it's just been footage of a big field, yay, you run around in a big open field. But it's kind of boring, because there's really nothing to see in that field except a bunch of goblins and a couple of other boring generic enemies and one behemoth, but that's about it. And the environments, they look good from a graphical standpoint, but from like a creative standpoint, all the environments look kind of dull and empty, and it just doesn't seem that exciting. And they just keep showing the same thing over and over and over as if it's really impressive, but it doesn't seem that impressive to me. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I'm not particularly looking forward to or anything, but that game's open world looks a lot more impressive, creatively anyways, compared to what we've seen so far of Final Fantasy 15. Now obviously Final Fantasy 15 has the better graphics, way better graphics. But The environments in Final Fantasy 15 look kind of boring, as I've mentioned, whereas in Xenoblade, the environments look really creative and colorful and bright and imaginative. And I have to admit, even though I'm not personally looking forward to Xenoblade, the videos I've seen of it look really impressive, at least as far as the environments are concerned. It does look like a pretty cool looking world, but Final Fantasy XV's world, on the other hand, looks bland and uninteresting. And there are other things too, like it has recently been confirmed, I think by Tabata, that there will be no airships in Final Fantasy 15. I mean, come on. Final Fantasy has had airships basically since from the beginning. Final Fantasy 1 on the NES had airships, I think. How can you have a mainline Final Fantasy game and not have airships? Not only that, but this is the best time to bring back airships compared to like any other time, because even though I'm not that excited about the open world aspect of the game, I was kind of interested in seeing how they would do airships in an open world RPG. I mean, that's the one aspect of the open world I was actually kind of interested in, because that seemed like it would be really cool. Like, I was actually kind of excited to see the airships in an open world setting. And that's a lot coming from someone like me who doesn't really care about open world stuff. But now we know that's not happening. Because again, I guess that's way too ambitious. And again, this is another one of those situations where I was like, I don't know if they're going to do this because it's too ambitious. But I mean, if they do it, I would like to see it because I want to see something that ambitious. I can't wait. It's just, are they actually going to be able to do it? I got to see that. But again, I was kind of correct in assuming they were not going to do it. So it's just, but he did mention, Mr. Tabata, that they may bring airships in as DLC, which I don't really feel good about that. To me, that just seems kind of sneaky, slimy, snaky, slathery. I don't exactly like DLC, and airships to me, especially for Final Fantasy, I think that's something that should have been in the game from the beginning. And not only that, but if they make it pay DLC, that's really going to be like, I don't know, to me that just seems really scumbaggy. Kind of like a scumbag tactic, because it's like, this is the basic function of the game, or at least should be a basic function of the game. And not only is there going to be downloadable content, but they're going to charge you for it. That would really be kind of scummy. But of course, that's not confirmed whether they're actually going to do that. I mean, it's confirmed the game isn't going to have airships out the gate, but they haven't confirmed whether it's going to be DLC or paid DLC. It might not be available as DLC at all. And if it is available as DLC, maybe it will be free DLC. If they do make it free DLC, I suppose I might be okay with it. At least I'll be better with that than if they made it paid DLC. But even if it is free DLC, I mean, it should have just been in the game from the beginning. But I suppose free DLC would be good enough. But that's not... I mean, we really don't know if what they're gonna do as far as that's concerned. If there's gonna be any DLC, free DLC, paid DLC, we have no idea. They haven't confirmed that, but they are thinking about it, and that kind of worries me. But either way, the fact that there are no airships to begin with, that's kind of a big blow, at least to me. For some reason, nobody else seems to think this is a big deal, because this was mentioned with a lot of other news. I didn't see too many people commenting on this particular tidbit, but that kind of really got to me personally. So, and again, like that Xenoblade game, you can fly around in your giant mechs. I mean, they're basically like airships. So it's like, if that game on the Wii U, which is way less powerful, they can do that on there, why can't they do airships on Final Fantasy 15, which has way better hardware and is just way better in as far as the system is concerned. But I think this might just have to do with time. I think because he said that there's no way they're going to be able to get airships in time for the game's release and may have to do it as DLC. So that implies that the problem isn't, as far as the technology is concerned, it's just time. They don't have enough time. But the game's been in development for almost 10 years, almost a decade. And if it comes out in 2016, it will be basically in development for a full 10 years. So how is 10 years not enough to make a game? Now, I suppose maybe I want to talk about this because the likely culprit here is procrastination. A lot of game development, especially games that have very large development times, a big issue they have is just procrastination. That is, they have, let's say, 5-6 years to make a game. They spend the first 3-4 years getting absolutely nothing done, and then the last few couple of years, the last 1 or 2 years, they enter into crunch time and they try to rush the game out as soon as possible because, hey, they've got a deadline. They can't just be working on the game for 20-30 years. Gotta release the game eventually. So this actually happens with a lot of games. Like even games you wouldn't think have this problem do actually have it. And this is why sometimes a game will have a very large development time, but it will still be rushed. It's not that the game was so big that they couldn't finish it in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. It's just that they spent most of those years not getting anything done, and then they have to rush the game out at the last second. This is incredibly common. Believe it or not, according to Shigeru Miyamoto, at least from an interview I read from him a long time ago, Mario 64 was actually rushed. You wouldn't believe it, considering how big the game is and how jam-packed of content it has. It has so much content, and it was one of the biggest games at the time, and it still is a really big, lengthy game with a huge world and so many things to do in it. It's kind of unbelievable. And yet, according to what Miyamoto has said in an interview, the game was in fact rushed. And there is some evidence of this in the game itself. For example, I think Miyamoto mentioned that he wanted to put Yoshi in the game and have the player ride Yoshi, but they didn't have enough time to do this. At least I think he said that. I might be wrong on that. So at the end, they could only put Yoshi in the game as an Easter egg, and you can't ride him. You just talk to him, he's an NPC, and he gives you 1-ups. You only can see him if you get all 120 stars in the game. He's at the very end of the game, kind of like your disappointing prize. And he gives you a little message from the development team, kind of thanking you for playing the game and stuff like that. So that's kind of the evidence that the game might have been rushed. Just the fact that Yoshi's in there as an Easter egg, but you can't ride him. And Miyamoto wanted to have Yoshi be rideable in that game. But anyways, that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about, where a lot of procrastination happens in game development. And that's why games get rushed out most of the time. It's not just tight or unreasonable deadlines, although that is a big problem as well. A lot of time top-level executives, they give these really tight deadlines and they don't give the creative talent enough time to work on stuff, and they just want, time is money. They want the game out as soon as possible. So that's also a problem. But it's not always that. Sometimes it really is just a case of procrastination. And like I said, I'm one to talk because I'm a huge procrastinator myself. And while I don't make games, I do write reviews and make videos and make other stuff. And I tend to fall into the same situation myself, especially with reviews. A lot of times I'll estimate that it's going to take me a week to in order to write a review, because I need to play the game. Maybe the game is really long. Got to beat the game. Got to write the review text, and write the outline, write the review, take screenshots. All of that takes time. So sometimes I'll be like, well, for this particular game, it's going to take me a week to review it, provided I work on it steadily every day. But then what actually happens is that for the first few days of that week, I won't do jack. I literally won't do anything at all. Then in the last 2-3 days, I'll enter into this crunch time where I try to rush the review out as soon as I can. Because I'm like, it's been a whole week and I have gotten nothing done. This review needs to get out pronto. So I want the review to be done that week. I don't want to spend 2 weeks on one review that really shouldn't take that long. So I might actually get the review out in like 3 days or 2 days, depending on how short the game is or how long the game is. And maybe it should have not it shouldn't have really taken a whole week, because most of that week was literally spent doing nothing. So that's procrastination for you. You have this time to work on stuff, you piss it all away, and then you rush things out at the last second and have crunch time. The whole reason of giving like myself a time frame like that, like a week, is so that I don't have to enter crunch time, so that I don't have to rush things out. But I always end up doing it anyways. And that probably happens in game development a lot. They give themselves a full 5 years, which should be plenty of time, and then it isn't because of all that pissing away of time. And that probably explains why a game like Final Fantasy Versus 13, which became Final Fantasy 15, took so many years to develop, almost a decade, or is going to be a decade. And I have a feeling that even though it's going to be a decade so far the game has been in development, the game is still going to be rushed. And we can already kind of predict that based on what they're saying about the airships. Because you're telling me you don't have enough time to put the airships, even though you've had 10 years to work on this game. So what does that tell me? It basically tells me that they really only have been working on the game for like the last 2-3 years. And everything before that either was scrapped or basically didn't exist. And like I said, this is incredibly common in game development. And that's why I thought this game was going to be cancelled, because most of the time when this happens, games get cancelled. But they ain't canceling it, they're going to release it. And it just sucks that a game like this has been in development for so long, it might end up rushed. Now we don't really know that because the game isn't out yet. Maybe it won't feel like it's rushed. But if I had to make a prediction, and my predictions are usually wrong, so I probably shouldn't be predicting anything. But if I had to predict something, I have a feeling this game is going to feel very rushed. Maybe it's not procrastination, because the 2011 trailer looked like they did have something done, even if it wasn't much. So sometimes it's not really procrastination, sometimes just scrapping. Sometimes game developers, they keep scrapping their game over and over and over. Like they might develop a game for like 1-2 years, and then they want to make a massive change and they have to scrap the entire project and essentially start from the beginning again. And then they'll work on it again for like a year, and then scrap that. And then, the cycle just keeps repeating over and over. So then you end up with a 10-year development cycle, and all you have to show for it is like 1 year's worth of development. Because the last like 8 years, you scrapped everything over and over. That's just kind of a harsh reality of game development, I suppose. You want to get something specific done, and sometimes you gotta scrap everything in order to do it. A lot of times that has to do with programming. You want to do something the engine is not capable of, and you can't add it into the engine, so you just have to scrap the engine and start from scratch. So the game so far doesn't look too impressive. It might end up being rushed despite the long development time, and I have a feeling it's going to be disappointing. Obviously, I don't know that for sure because the game is not out yet. It is possible, while it's improbable, it's possible that the reason why the game doesn't look good right now, at least to me, obviously that's my opinion, but it's possible that maybe they're just misrepresenting the game. I noticed recently that a lot of developers have been misrepresenting their game in trailers. Now obviously that's incredibly common. It's always been common. It's been common for movies for basically forever, and it's also been common for games. But generally when a developer or whatever, they misrepresent their game in a trailer, it's usually to make the game look better than it actually is. But recently I've noticed sometimes developers misrepresent their game in a trailer in a way that makes their game looks worse than it actually is. An example of this was Super Mario 3D World. When Mario 3D World was first revealed, the very first trailer they showed of it looked really bland and boring, and it just didn't look exciting at all. It showed the gameplay footage, which that's pretty good for a first trailer. But I mean, it is Nintendo. Usually Nintendo shows gameplay right off the bat, since they're not the kind of company that does cutscenes all that much. But anyways, they showed gameplay footage, and they showed a couple of levels, and all the levels they showed were basically the worst levels in the game. Like literally the least exciting, blandest, least interesting levels of the game. And a lot of people were chalking the game up as a future failure. They were like, this looks awful and it's not going to be good. It looks like it's going to be just like 3D Land, maybe even blander and not that good. Not that 3D Land was bad or anything. I mean, I personally loved 3D Land, but I had to admit, based on the first trailer of 3D World, it didn't look that exciting. But eventually, like later on, they showed another trailer of the game, and that one actually looked pretty good. And then the game actually came out, and people played it, and then people realized, hey, this is actually really good. It's way better than the trailer, or at least way better than the first trailer. And I felt like that too. I was like, as I played the game, I was really blown away by it. It really was good. I mean, it was fantastic. Arguably one of the best games on the Wii U. And that initial trailer did not do it justice at all. Like, if people were to base their entire purchasing decision on the first Super Mario 3D World trailer, most people would not buy it. And I couldn't really blame them, because that first trailer was the suck. But then the game turned out to be good, so it didn't really matter anyways. So anyhow, that's an example of like developers misrepresenting their game in a way that makes it look worse. And it's possible that this is happening to Final Fantasy 15. Maybe Square Enix is just keeping a lot of things close to their chest. They want to keep something up their sleeve. So all the really cool parts of the game, they haven't shown it yet. And they won't show it until later, if ever. And maybe that's why the trailers and the demos that we see now aren't that great, because they're showing us literally the worst parts of the game. Now, I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why you as a developer would show the worst part of your game and then keep all the good parts secret. But maybe they're doing that. And if they are doing that, then it could result that my opinion will completely change later on if they reveal stuff about the game that's really cool, or when the game fully gets released and we find out that it's actually really cool and the demos and the trailers were just misrepresenting it. But who knows? And honestly, I find that to be unlikely. As for why a developer will misrepresent their game like this, I don't always fully know. Maybe some developers feel like they don't want to spoil the really good parts of the game, so they show the boring parts. Or maybe some developers are just not a very good judge of their own game. Sometimes you're not a good judge of what you make. Like maybe the developer thinks these parts of the game are really good, but they're actually really bad. And then the other parts that the developer doesn't think are as good are actually the best parts of the game ever. Right? Or maybe other people think they're good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like every once in a while somebody will watch one of my videos and they'll tell me, hey, that Sonic 1 video you did is really good. And I'll be like, that's literally my worst video. Why do you like it? And to me, that video is really bad. And then I'll show them like another video I did which I kind of like or maybe I'm proud of because I think is better. And then they'll think it's not a good video. They being this example hypothetical person we're talking about who doesn't exist. So that could just be that I'm not a good judge of my own content that I create. And maybe other people are a better judge of that. And perhaps this is what has happened to the developers of Final Fantasy 15. they're not a good judge of the content they're creating, and therefore they're only showing us really crappy, boring stuff that we don't want to see, or at least that I don't want to see, because some other people seem to like the stuff that has been shown. So who knows, maybe later on cool stuff will be shown about the game and my opinion will change. I will reserve my judgment for when the game actually gets released. But that is what it is. So post your thoughts. Let me know. Are you still excited for this game? Or are you like me and your excitement has kind of withered away? I think this is where I want to call it. Well, guys, I shall see you later.